What's up, everybody? My name is Matt James, and welcome to Generation Bitcoin. Today, I'm here with Carlos Alfaro. How you doing today, Carlos?
Good. Thanks for having me, Matt.
Yeah, man. Super glad to have you on. Let's go through some backstory. You and I have been friends back in college through Young Americans for Liberty and Students for Liberty back in the day. We were both involved in the Liberty movement, trying to get the word out about Ron Paul and why it's so important to protect our liberties. I'm so glad we're able to reconnect after all these years. So tell me a little bit more about how you got involved in the Liberty movement and why that appealed to you.
I would have to say the number one thing is just viewing how I grew up in Mexico, was brought here at an early age and got to see the two different worlds of how a country operates, right? Why certain institutions are stronger in one area than it might be in another. And you can really see that right off the bat. It's something that you don't have to study very much to realize, right? Living in one place and comparing it to the other. And so as I was growing up, I was very curious about what made America the way that it is. And what really attracted me was the diversity and the immigrant story that America has. The history of immigrants coming to this country and making something of themselves, being free, a very individualistic kind of ideology. And so that gave me hope, and I wanted to see if there was a way for me to promote that. And so in college, I looked into, being a politician or being an attorney or being an academic and getting a PhD and writing a book about something. And as I did all these things, I really enjoyed it, but I found myself enjoying those extracurricular activities a little more. So, going and working for nonprofits, building groups on campus, having events and debates together. And so that's where I really found my joy and my success, because as we were doing these events for Students for Liberty and the Young Libertarians Club, we really started attracting Democrats, Republicans, and independents from all around us, our peers, and even in the parties. And eventually I ran college Republicans, which was really cool. And it allowed me to do something different. Instead of focusing on the party and the candidates, we focused on the issues. And so our team of 6 people, our group meeting of 6 people grew because we were no longer talking about small politics or even state politics. We were talking about issues that affected nations and the world. And so we would bring people together to discuss those, and really found that I enjoyed putting conversations like that together. To be able to do that, bring in the politics, bring in the academics, bring in the business, and kind of put something together to promote stuff, to promote good policy.
Yeah, I know what you mean. America, we definitely used to have a lot of freedoms, and that definitely enabled America to get to where we are now.
Well, and then, it also has a very complicated history, right? Because I was at a dinner one day, and I think this is the best way to explain it because it kind of hit me hard when somebody says, make America great again. To him, he thought about when America was not so great for certain groups of people in this country, whether it was for slavery, whether it was for exploitation, whatever it was. America has a difficult past that it needs to deal with, but it is great because regardless of that, it moves on and it provides even more freedoms for people. So in a way, one could say that we're freer today than before.
Yeah, so you have quite the experience with all this. You've been through a lot of organizations, working for the Goldwater Institute, the Libre Initiative in Arizona, Students for Liberty, Young Americans for Liberty, the Cato Institute, a Marijuana Policy Project, and now you're the Arizona Political Director at Alliance for Safety and Justice, and you're the founder of Arizona Talks. So we got a lot of organizations there. So tell me a little bit about, what you do now and what led you to where you are now and why you chose this profession.
Yeah, well, I think it came out of that desire to bring people together to talk about policy. Some of my favorite nights have been spent sitting around dinner or a beer or coffee and talking about a particular issue with people that know about it, whether it's an expert or just my peers and friends. And so I believe that there's something there to be said about this country where we can do that. No matter what your background is, religious, country, whatever, we're able to live together and have these difficult conversations and make democracy work somehow. And so the way that I see it is promoting civil dialogue. And that's what really drives me is that whether it's advocating for a policy to go through with a consulting side, where we're actually advocating for something, or whether we're featuring a topic in a way that we're not pushing any side, but we're providing all the sides an opportunity to talk about it and have people make up their own minds. So all of that I see as driving towards promoting civil dialogue and civil discussion, and really like the way that America has been for a long time. We're able to have these open discussions as part of our American culture, and so I hope that we can continue to do that.
Yeah, definitely. That's why we got this podcast here, right? Having an open discussion here.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah. So with Arizona Talks, are you having what kind of conversations do you have within that organization? What's your goal with it?
Yeah, I was mentioning to you before the podcast that it was a passion project of mine, really what I want to be doing long term. The advocacy stuff is great. Awesome. I love doing that. I like to see bills being passed that are beneficial for business and the economy and people just living here. But also, I want to promote that civil dialogue at all levels. And so the last year, when we weren't able to go outside, when we were not able to do our regular programming, we really honed down on our ability to do virtual events. And as we've been starting to come out, small, socially distanced Jeffersonian dinners where we bring in key folks in a particular topic and we have a conversation about it. For example, we talked about riots versus peaceful protests, where we discuss what the line is there, what's good, what's historically been Americans' response to peaceful protests, number one, and then riots, number two. And they've actually been happening even before the founding of our country on this soil. And so it's so interesting to dig into those stories. My organization tries to put it in a way that very different viewpoints are featured. So while we have people that are experts and have a certain point of view, they're also being challenged at the same time by their peers and colleagues on their own beliefs.
Very cool. Well, it sounds like very productive, and I'm sure you guys got a lot done through those dinners.
Yeah. There's not a lot of like bills or deal making or anything like that, but what we do accomplish is that for that night, there was a space where civil dialogue was had about that particular topic, and that's important enough to us to keep that tradition alive. If we keep doing that, then this country's going to be in a better place.
For sure. Awesome. So getting into criminal justice, I know that's your specialty. So laws are constantly being added. I'm sure they're rarely taken away, right? They're always added. There's so many laws in the books now. I read that it's been estimated that the average person unknowingly breaks at least 3 federal crimes a day, which is insane. You're walking around and you're just always breaking laws. So in your eyes, I was wondering, is this too many laws? Has it got out of hand in your opinion? And if so, where do you think the right amount of legislation is in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a big question. I think that we have certainly been over criminalized in this country, and laws that tend to want to do good but have unintended consequences. We see this most clearly in some of the criminal justice policies that have been passed in recent decades that have criminalized and made it harder for people to get away from the justice system and to rehabilitate and go back and have a fresh start. We've also seen it in the drug war as we spend billions and billions of dollars in arresting people and trying to shut down cartels, where the real enemy or the real cause of this is actually demand. It's not that there's bad guys out there that want to sell bad drugs, it's that people want to take those drugs. And that the only alternative that they have is to go to the black market. And it is crazy how some people don't see the parallel between prohibition days with alcohol and the drug war that we see today. It's certainly a different substance, it's certainly used in different ways, but certainly, punishing and using the criminal justice system for some of those things has proven not to be of benefit to our country.
Yeah, I agree. It's gotten out of hand for sure. And that's a good point, that it is a result of demand. If there's demand for something, they're going to meet that demand no matter if it's legal or not. And it's a hard thing to try to legislate when there's a demand for it.
And we still need laws around these substances. Growing up in the libertarian movement through college, there was a very, very big resistance to compromise and to just have regular standard rules apply. For example, a great example of this was the marijuana laws that were trying to pass across the country, where we're trying to legalize a substance that is illegal. But then we found resistance in some libertarian communities saying, well, you're going to tax it and regulate it. Mm-hmm. And we said, well, that's what a legal product is today. We don't want overburdened government where people are arresting people for using a product. But we also don't want a product that has no regulation and no oversight, where the same kind of, oppression can happen. Because not only can governments oppress and take advantage of people, but individuals can too, right? I mean, that's exactly why we need the justice system and why we need police.
That's true.
To be used
if there's
in the
fraud.
right way.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I was just going to talk about that actually with the marijuana legislation. It's been decriminalized in a lot of places, which is good, and it was even deemed essential during the COVID shutdowns, which is pretty insane. It went from going to jail just for possession to essential and must be open during COVID. And another thing I read in the news was that Washington state government was giving out free weed to get vaccinated. And it's just insane, like they're giving away weed. Meanwhile, there's people in jail for it. So my question about that is, do you think we're headed in the right direction with this decriminalization? And what do you think should be targeted next for decriminalization?
Absolutely going in the right direction. We've seen the examples from Colorado to Washington and now more and more states as they legalize, even Arizona, that the black market can't be ruling this product, right? And so when you put businesses that do it the right way, you're gonna see a much better product, number one, a safer product, and regulation and oversight, which is, I think, exactly what even the prohibitionists are trying to get at, right? They're saying this is a dangerous substance. We need to control it in some way, but they arrive at the conclusion that we should ban it altogether and arrest anybody that has it, where a more viable solution is regulate ID laws, that show that the person that is going to purchase it is of right age, whatever that age is. I think we're going in the right direction, and it's always important to know that there are people that, even though we live in the legal world, there are still people in jail, and there are still people with records that are still being affected by that prohibition, and it's important to look at that. In the Arizona law, they're allowing people to erase their records or expunge records for marijuana charges that were nonviolent, and that's the first expungement ever in existence here in Arizona. So there is no other way you can expunge your record here that the law does not allow you, even if you've already gone to jail, if you've paid whatever retribution you had, whatever it is, you still always have a record and you still always have that burden on you. We were able to remove that with marijuana charges, and I hope we're able to remove that for more. That's the important part of legalization, is that it's a criminal justice issue. It's not just about pushing the product and saying how great it is, but it's about reforming the criminal justice system. And those are two sides of it. Yes, it's great. Yes, a new industry is going to be created. But most importantly, people aren't going to go to jail, and we're not going to have to spend that money in programs that don't work. So I hope that it goes into more substances. I hope that we see the benefits of substances like psychedelics, like other medicines. I know on the other side of the coin, we have a legislation called Right to Try at the federal level, where if you're experiencing some sort of terminally ill disease, you're able to go and try alternative medicines to try to, fight that off. So at all levels, we're winning. We're going towards more freedom in our own bodies, and I hope that it continues. We have to legalize not just marijuana, but we have to legalize the use of our own bodies. We can't let the government dictate what goes in or out, especially if there's a doctor involved. So I hope that we're going that way, and it certainly seems that way.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I am hoping that we go more that direction, and I think think psilocybin seems to be the next on board. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these things should be treated as medicines, as substances that can benefit our community, not dangerous and out of control like they've been due to the policy that has been in place. That's what makes it dangerous, is the law.
In contrast, though, to this whole government criminal justice system that we live in, where they're just able to add more and more laws to the system, Bitcoin, on the other hand, is censorship resistant, right? Rules can't be added or altered to the protocol without, proper consensus from the network. So it's a very
Could you tell me about that? Because I've been hearing in conversations about investing, oh, just wait, the government's not going to sit by and not regulate this thing. They're going to regulate it. It's almost like a given in circles like this. So you're saying that it actually cannot be regulated like other monies can, right?
Well, it can be regulated to a certain extent, but the actual Bitcoin is a protocol. It's a consensus protocol that everyone runs and agrees to, and that code can't be easily altered or added to by anybody. There's systems in place where everyone has to agree. Everyone who runs a node has to agree to run that version of the code. What a node is you just are able to download the ledger onto your computer, and it's very simple. I have one in the corner of my room, just like a little Raspberry Pi, less than $100. And you run that node, and you're able to verify that everything's being run in an honest way and things aren't being changed. So it's decentralized to a point where there's thousands of nodes throughout the entire world, and so no one can come in and just change the protocol. It doesn't work that way, but they can regulate it. They can regulate it to a certain extent where they say that they can make it illegal. They could try to tax every transaction. They could say, you have to do X, but you doing X is up to you, right? They can't force any changes, and that's the beauty of it. So
that's great.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
I know you are libertarian, and you've been interested in Bitcoin for a little while. But when did you first hear about it? I'm curious. How long ago?
Wow.
Where were you in
It would have
your
had
life?
to be like in 2013, back in college. Just listening. Exactly it. Like, it was deregulation or not being able to be controlled by a central power, and still had value in exchanges. I mean, it's just something that it's almost out of a libertarian book, right?
Yeah.
So I started hearing
dream.
about that. Yeah, exactly. I started hearing about it, and it kind of seemed really technical. I gotta say, it still does to a lot of people. And back in the day, I think it was like $30 or something. So it's definitely changed since then, and now people are paying attention. Mainstream, outlets are paying attention every single day to this. So I think it's here to stay, and I'm looking forward to see how it can become more accessible. I mean, talk about accessibility to the public over the last few years. Everybody's pretty much able to do it right now from their phone.
Yep. Yeah, you got Venmo, you got Cash App, you got PayPal. These big companies, you can buy it right on there, the click of a button. Definitely. It's come a long ways over the years, for sure.
Yeah, so I'm curious, do you recommend like some sort of cryptocurrency in a portfolio? I mean, do you yourself hold a lot of Bitcoin?
I do, yeah. Bitcoin is the majority of my net worth, and it's going up as I research and understand it more, to be honest. As I research it, I listen and to podcasts, and I research Bitcoin almost all day, every day. I'm super obsessed with it, and the more I research it, the more I want to go heavier on it. So I don't recommend you to buy Bitcoin just straight up. I recommend you to research it, because if you buy it, you're not going to have the understanding and to hold it when it because it's going to be volatile, and you have to be prepared for that. So I've been through the 2017 crash, and now this crash, and it's just part of what you got to deal with. So those times that it goes down, you got to really research it and increase your conviction, so you hold.
Yes, hold. That's great, man.
Hodl.
That's really good to know. Because, people get really emotional with their investments, no matter how many times you hear it. And on anything, whether it's holding index funds or what, people still get emotional when it's a big, big part of their cash and their wealth. So I'm looking forward to have it be more. But then there's also all these smaller coins, right? It's not just Bitcoin, it's like thousands of all these other coins.
Yeah.
And it almost seems like the penny stocks in a way. Like, which one are
Yep.
you gonna like? I saw Pikachu coin. I've seen, other fun. They're almost kind of like pushing it just because they have a fun name.
Yeah.
And to me, it might not call to the fundamentals, right, of investing. And maybe that's a little bit older fashioned, but that really scares, or I don't know. That's just like a new thing to see all
Yeah.
these coins in their names.
Yep. Yep. There's thousands out there, and it takes less than an hour to make your own. So there's really not much of a barrier of entry here. You can create a token on the Ethereum blockchain in minutes. So you have to really be careful out there for sure. There's a lot of people who shill their crypto to pump their bags and dump on you. So you
Wow.
gotta be careful out there for sure.
You got to be careful. Do your research, do your reading. I just
Yeah.
recently got into it. Going out on my own and doing my own consulting company. It was important that I knew like where my money was going, number one, but also like where is it going in the future? Is it making me money or is it losing me money with inflation and everything that's going on in taxes? And setting up a retirement account was the first thing that anybody should do, and make sure that they're at least taking advantage of that compound interest in something that's long term going to be a benefit. And I think the American economy is a good bet, right? I mean, that's what Warren Buffett says all the time. If you invest in these index funds, and you're betting that the market is going to be better tomorrow than it is today, and I think that's great. I mean,
Yep.
if the government doesn't continue to tax and spend and decrease the value of our money.
Yeah. Oh, they
So
will. They will. Speaking of inflation, how they always reference CPI, and that's a selected basket of goods that they choose to be included in this measurement that they use to display to the public as inflation. However,
yeah.
over time, technology gets better, prices normally go down, but that doesn't take into account that, right? CPI, if you say prices went up 2%, well, without inflation, what if they went down 10%? Then that would be 10 plus 2, that'd be 12% is the real number to look at. So what I like to look at is the money supply. I don't
Wow.
know if you ever look at that, but the money
Yeah,
supply
sure.
has gone up a lot. It's gone up over 20% in the last year. So I think that's more of a measurement to look at in terms of inflation. It's pretty insane.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And I know there's been a lot of reports and studies that show that inflation is going up in a very dramatic way currently,
Yeah, yeah, for
because of
sure.
all of that. So I hope that, because we've been through moments of inflation before in history, I hope that we're able to catch up to that. Obviously, there's huge federal programs and more printing going on, and the possibility of the Fed raising interest rates. And so that's going to be a big factor. What a time to be alive.
Yeah. Well, everyone's being forced into investments and taking riskier and riskier decisions for investing because they have to try to maintain their value. And when the dollar is being inflated at 20% a year, you have to make 20% on your investments in order just to maintain your value. So it's pretty crazy what's going on. And I don't think the money printing is going to go down. Do you? I think that
No,
they need the money
no, I don't
printer.
know that there's no incentive to turn it off. They talked about one stimulus check, then two, and maybe that was, there's an argument there. People were suffering, we needed this thing. It's an argument. I'm not saying I agree with it, but two, then three, and now they're talking four, and all of this money is going to people that might help them, it might not. And this is the best way. My dad, he lives in Mexico, and they're hearing about these checks. They call it the Trump check. Now they're calling it the Biden checks. And they said, is that a lot of money what people are getting? And I said, well, if you don't need it, it is. You can go and spend it and buy something nice or invest it, and that's, $1,000 some that you didn't have before. That's a lot of money. But if you actually need it for rent and food and all of that, it's really not that much. And so that goes to show you how government works and operates. It's, one single thing fits all, one big bureaucracy that really fit to what the solutions are. And really the last people we want fixing these problems are these bureaucrats and politicians. My gosh, see, I'm going back to my libertarian ways over here. You let me ramble long enough. So yeah, all to say that we really need to look at what the role of government is and really take a hard look at that. Having said that, the party that's supposed to be the check on that, the small government party, the Let's Watch Spending, the Watchdog Group party, haven't been doing a great job. You look at the last administration and how much they spent. It was like economic conservatism. And responsibility was never a value of the Republican Party. It was like thrown out the last administration, and so many people thought that was fine. Nobody really seemed to mind. So I hope there's a movement out there that brings back fiscal responsibility as a value that we should have.
Yeah. Well, I think with the Bitcoin standard, people are forced into a more honest and transparent financial system. So I think hopefully Bitcoin can fix that. that's
Let's
the hope.
hope. Yeah. Maybe we're going to need it in a way that we're not asking, is it going to take over? We're going to say, well, that's the alternative we have to take because the dollar is so worthless.
Yeah.
That might be the thing. So now I know that there's arguments against this whole thing that we've been doing because I know we've been pushing the inflation side. What do you think is the best argument against this? Because I know there's people that see government spending as a positive. When the economy is growing, maybe you can take on some debt and help people out and all that kind of stuff. Do you think there's any merit there?
I think that if you look throughout history, fiat currencies are a tool that government uses to fund, warfare, huge, unlimited amount of spending. And I think that if you look at the way we're headed and how the people who are closest to the money printer are the ones who get the most benefit, big corporations, the banks on the top, of course. I don't see this stopping anytime soon. So I do see that there are points that they make to try to give out stimulus checks. People are in need. Yeah, sure. But what are the repercussions? I don't think the repercussions are worth the temporary fix with our fiat system, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's move on to another question here. I don't know if you've ever heard Michael Saylor talk about Bitcoin, but he says that Bitcoin gives property rights to billions of people, and it's banking on the unbanked. It's allowing people to escape tyranny and hyperinflation, giving them an alternative to store their value in. And so in your opinion, do you think that this is the most significant technology of our lifetime in terms of granting human rights to everyone worldwide?
It certainly could be, especially because the question keeps coming up, where do I put my money where it's not going to just lose its value? And if you can bring Bitcoin into that conversation, more people can attain it, because it's usually real estate, right? The answer for so many years has been, we'll just buy some real estate. It appreciates over time. It's a great investment for hedging for inflation. Well, now real estate is at an all-time high because everybody's flooding to it for many reasons. So is there an alternative to that? I think Bitcoin could very well be that alternative. Due to the technology, I think you can make a very strong argument on that. But because it's so new and because it is technical, I think that's a barrier to help even more people that it could be helping.
Yeah.
Hopefully, podcasts like these are bringing that understanding so that more people can attain that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're in this position where we live in America. We have options. We can purchase real estate. We can purchase stocks, and it's all relatively safe and secure. However, there's billions of people out there who don't have those options, and there's people who don't even have a ability to have a bank account, and they don't have a native currency in their country or whatever it may be, and I think this gives them an option of being able to store their value. Imagine if you don't have access to any assets to invest in, and you only have a currency that's being hyperinflated, and every day you try to store your value, it goes down. The next day, it's 50% down or whatever. It's they don't have many options. So I think it's definitely gives a lot of value to people out there who don't have the nice options that we do here. So.
And it's, I think, like the passive innovation, the communication and resources that the internet brought, as well as the communications that we have allowed. Like even the markets have opened up for people all over the world just because we're able to have commerce through the internet, and it's just all pointing that way to a global community, a more global community and a less isolated. Even though there's still people today that live so isolated, which is nuts, because we have all this now, and it's sad to see that there are people in countries due to dictatorships and horrible political systems that don't allow them to live in this, I guess, prosperity.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, there's lots of instances of people being able to escape tyranny and escape their country, and if their property is seized at the border, they can't seize Bitcoin because you can store it in your head. You can put it on a piece of paper. There's lots of ways to store it, which is pretty cool. It really gives a lot of power back to the people. So that's why
agency. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Sovereign.
Man. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully it's a hedge with a impending downturn. Hopefully, it'll be a big test. People have said we're in a bull market for the last 12 years or whatever, and everybody's expecting a downturn eventually. Who knows what's going to come, but it will be interesting to see that if we do have one, how Bitcoin will hold up to that.
Yeah. I think Bitcoin has proved itself to be quite resilient over the years, but I do think the biggest opponent of Bitcoin is going to be governments. And I know you mentioned that earlier as a counter argument towards Bitcoin, and I do think it is the most valid concern regarding Bitcoin is governments coming after it, and I do think they will harder and harder over the years. But the thing is they can't stop it. They can try to legislate it, but they can't force things upon it because of the nature of Bitcoin.
They cannot manipulate the amount of Bitcoin that is out there, and that's the main thing.
They can't change the supply. Exactly. The supply is transparent. Right. It's in the code. It's predictable. You can see how many Bitcoins are going to be created until the hard cap of 21 million. And it's a complete, honest, transparent system instead of fiat, which is awesome.
That is so great. Yeah, it could be the future, man. It's going to be great if it does change, and we can look back and say, remember we used to pay with like steel coins that we used to carry in our pockets and it jingled?
Yep. Yeah, that was steel coins. At least that was, somewhat limited. And then we got off the gold standard, and then absolutely no limit. Yep. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard recently at the Bitcoin 2021 conference, Jack Mallers announced El Salvador was making Bitcoin legal tender. They don't have their own currency there. They're a very good candidate to have Bitcoin as legal tender because A, they don't have their own currency, B, 70% of people there are unbanked and don't have access to store their value in anything, like I was saying before. So that's pretty exciting thing to have happen. What do you think about that? You think more countries are going to get on board, and if so, who do you think's next, and what will that lead to?
Yeah, no, I think that especially countries that are in need of that, right? You'd want to think that the U.S. or more advanced countries would get to it first, and like you said, you can actually buy it on Venmo and other cash apps and other stuff like that. But I think the question goes beyond that. It's like, which country is going to actually implement it as its, that's a little bigger than just saying anybody can buy it. And so I think we're going to be seeing countries that are emerging countries attach themselves onto it. Just like countries that didn't have phone lines, phone went into having cell phones right away and didn't have to deal with, just landlines all the time. So they'll skip that innovation step. But I do think it's going to be emerging markets first.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's pretty cool what they're doing there with Jack's company called Strike. They're utilizing a second layer Lightning network to be able to send and receive payments virtually for free and instantly. And
Oh, wow.
a lot of people are they're actually requiring businesses to accept it as payment. And I think they're making some exceptions. They're not being fully implementing that. But if you're not
Yeah.
if you're not tech savvy enough, they're not going to put you in jail for not. But they are saying that they require businesses to accept it. So I think that's quite a big leap forward for Bitcoin.
And it's culture, right? Culture driving that change instead of legislation. We don't have to wait for somebody to pass something to make it policy. We can just culturally want it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the cool thing is no one forces you to use Bitcoin or adopt it. Right? Everyone who uses the Bitcoin network chooses to. Unlike fiat we're required to. That's a great thing about the Bitcoin network. So
Yeah, that's great. I can't wait to see it grow.
me too. So how do you think us supporting Bitcoin? What are some ways you think that we can support the network and get the word out there and help to grow it?
Well, I think that I don't know if it's our age or whatever, we're in the point where people are talking about their finances, and especially people in our generation or maybe even just our age group need to have those conversations and introduce Bitcoin into the conversation. It was seen as this fringe tech kind of thing, and now because it's so mainstream, anytime investing comes up, Bitcoin comes up too. And so number one thing you can do is buy Bitcoin and be a supporter of what you understand. So understand it, invest in it, and then talk about it would be my how you promote this. We've been having conversations with Arizona Talks and our foundation about investing. And one of the things that we want to do is produce some sort of conversation about Bitcoin because people need that information. And I think they would be interested enough to the point where they would be willing to hear from somebody like a peer of theirs talk about that experience and having a good experience about that. And so that's how I get most motivated is I see other people like you on social media and just articles sharing the good news of that. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say. Be personally invested.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. It's definitely quite the rabbit hole to go down, and you got to start your research somewhere. And you and I have a pretty good understanding of Federal Reserve and our whole fiat monetary system due to our background in libertarianism and understanding that. So we have a little bit of a head start there. But I agree, and I think a good place to start is asking yourself what is money and where does it come from and how is it created and why is it created and all that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And to join that conversation, it can be intimidating because it's kind of like it's its own study, really. Like talking about investments, it's almost you have to put time into that. But if you don't do it because it's hard, then you're not going to get the benefits from it. And it's just something everybody has to do. The younger, the better. But again, I look at talking to myself when I was 20 about this, and I probably rolled my eyes and be like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about here? So I think it's much more attainable now, and much younger people are getting into it. That can have a double-edged sword to it, because I'm sure you've heard of the cases where people are just messing around on Robinhood or whatever, and they're doing all these risky things, and sometimes they're messing up, and that could lead to bad consequences or negative outcomes when people do it too much. But I really don't see the case of that being now. I think the case, especially for Bitcoin, is to have more and more people understand the benefits of it and how it can benefit their lives.
Yeah. I would separate, in my opinion, stacking sats, buying Bitcoin from gambling. They're kind of different in my eyes, but there's definitely a lot of enticing, altcoins, other cryptocurrencies, stock options, all that, very risky behavior. I would definitely not recommend, because it's probably a losing game in the long run.
So, question for you: do you see Bitcoin then as a long-term investment and not a short-term kind of like, I'm going to get, huge gains and then get out?
Yeah, I do. I don't try to time the market. The extent of me trying to time the market is merely purchasing a little bit more if it's gone down. I dollar cost average in, I buy on red days, and I have a holding period of forever, hopefully. So I don't plan to sell. I'm not completely closed off. There's always a possibility that a better Bitcoin is created. I can't comprehend that happening, but I suppose it's possible. So yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, this is different than, for example, the what is it, the super shorts, with AMC and GameStop. I mean, it almost gets lumped together, but it really is completely different. You're talking about shorting a stock and doing that, and then you're talking about a currency on another side. So that has gotten pretty crazy as well.
Yeah, Bitcoin is made to be the base layer of our new financial system, and you can already see development being done on a second layer. We got DeFi being built on Bitcoin, decentralized lending and whatnot, as well as Lightning Network, allowing for instant and free transactions. So the base layer is meant to be secure and very slow to change, very hard to change, very decentralized. And that's what Bitcoin goes for. There's a trade-off for everything, and Bitcoin strives to be the most decentralized and stable and limited supply base layer. So that's why I say I'm in for the long run. Yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. That's great, man.
Cool, man. Well, thanks a lot for talking to me. I really enjoyed our conversation here. And yeah, if you could just go over where people can find you. I know you got your passion job, Arizona Talks, and where can people find you if they want to find out more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Arizona Talks Foundation. We're all in every platform. If you just search for Arizona Talks, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we're on there promoting different conversations every single month on public policy issues, whether it be criminal justice, immigration, whatever it is. We're at arizonatalks.org or any social media that you're on. Hopefully you get to find us and see our talks, because what we're trying to do is not to change people's minds, but to promote the idea that we can talk about hard issues and still move forward as a country. So thank you so much, Matt, for giving me this platform.
Yeah, thanks for coming, and really enjoyed talking to you. Have a good one.
Yeah, talk soon. Bye.
Bye.